I'll give you $100 million if you open the safe, the millionaire laughed, mocking the barefoot boy. He had no idea he was betting against the wrong person and was about to lose everything. The sound of Preston Montgomery's $5,000 shoes hitting marble echoed through the lobby like gunshots. Parker didn't have time to move. He was on his knees, bare knees on cold stone, scrubbing at a stubborn stain with a rag so worn it was practically transparent. His hands, small and raw from chemical burns, worked in desperate circles. The bucket beside him was cracked, held together with duct tape his father had carefully applied weeks ago. "Move!" The word wasn't a request. It was a command laced with disgust. Parker scrambled backward so fast his elbow hit the bucket. Water, dirty, soapy water, exploded across the pristine white marble like a tsunami in miniature. It spread in every direction, soaking into the boy's threadbare jeans, flooding toward Preston Montgomery's Italian leather shoes. Time stopped. Preston stared at the approaching water, then at the terrified child, then back at the water. His face transformed, from surprise to fury in less than a heartbeat. "Are you serious right now?" His voice boomed through the lobby, bouncing off glass walls and corporate art. Employees froze mid-stride. Conversations died. Everyone turned to watch. "Do you have any idea what you've just done?" Parker's throat closed. No words would come. His hands shook so violently the rag fell from his fingers, landing in the puddle with a sad little splash. I'm sorry, sir, I didn't." "Didn't what?" Preston took a step forward, his shadow falling over the boy like a storm cloud. "Didn't think? Didn't look where you were going? Or didn't care that you're making this building look like we hire street children?" The words hit Parker like physical blows. He could feel dozens of eyes on him, executives in designer suits, receptionists with perfect makeup, security guards who suddenly found the floor very interesting. Heat crawled up his neck, burning his ears, stinging his eyes. "Please, I'll clean it right now, You'll what?" Preston's laugh was sharp, cruel. "You know what this marble costs? More than your mother makes in 6 months. And you just—" He gestured at the spreading mess, treated it like a playground. A sound made them both turn. Rebecca appeared at the top of the stairs, her cleaning cart rattling violently as she descended too fast, too desperate. At 37, Rebecca Mitchell looked 50. Her hands were destroyed, scarred from years of bleach and abrasive cleaners, knuckles swollen, nails broken to the quick. Her uniform was clean but faded. Washed so many times the company logo was barely visible. Dark circles under her eyes spoke of 16-hour workdays and sleepless nights, worrying about bills. "Mr. Montgomery, please," she gasped, nearly stumbling as she reached them. "Parker was just trying to help before school hours. He meant no disrespect." "School hours?" Preston's eyebrows shot up. "It's 7 in the morning. What school starts at 7? Silence. Rebecca's face drained of color. He doesn't—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "Doesn't what?" Preston's eyes narrowed. Then understanding dawned, and his expression shifted into something worse than anger. Pity mixed with contempt. Oh. He doesn't go to school anymore, does he?" The lobby was so quiet you could hear the ventilation system humming. "We had some financial difficulties," Rebecca whispered, "and we had to make temporary adjustments." "Financial difficulties." Preston repeated the words like they tasted bad. "So instead of education, you bring him here to play janitor, to learn the family business of scrubbing toilets and mopping floors?" Each word was carefully chosen, precisely aimed, designed to wound. Parker watched his mother's shoulders curve inward, watched her spine bend under the weight of public shame. She was shrinking before his eyes, and something inside him, something he didn't know he possessed, ignited. "My mother," Parker's voice came out steady, clear, "works harder than anyone in this building." The entire lobby seemed to inhale. Preston turned slowly, his eyes widening in disbelief. "What did you just say to me?" "I said—" Parker stood up, water dripping from his jeans, bare feet planted firmly on marble that cost more than his family made in a year. "My mother works harder than anyone here. She's never late, never complains, never cuts corners. She treats every floor like it matters, every toilet like someone's going to use it. Parker, stop!" Rebecca reached for her son, but he stepped away. "No, Mom." The boy's brown eyes, intelligent, burning with something fierce, locked onto Preston Montgomery's. He needs to hear this. Just because you clean doesn't mean you're less important. Just because we're poor doesn't mean we're stupid. And just because you have money doesn't mean you're better than us. The silence that followed was deafening. Preston's face went through several colors, red, purple, nearly white with rage. His hands clenched into fists. When he finally spoke, his voice was dangerously soft. "How old are you, kid?" 11? 11. Preston nodded slowly. At 11, I was at a private academy learning Latin and economics. At 11, I had a tutor for mathematics and another for chess. Do you know what you're learning at 11? He gestured cruelly at the bucket, the rag, the spreading water. You're learning how to be invisible, how to clean up other people's messes, how to grovel and apologize and know your place. Preston crouched down, bringing himself eye level with Parker. His cologne was expensive, overwhelming. Let me tell you something, kid. This, he gestured around the lobby, this is where you'll spend your whole life. On your knees, if you're lucky. Preston, a new voice cut through the tension. Olivia, his executive assistant, had just arrived. She stood frozen in the doorway, her tablet clutched to her chest, horror written across her face. Preston, that's enough. Enough? Preston stood, turning that cold smile on her. I'm just educating the boy, teaching him about reality, about how the world works. By humiliating a child in front of 30 witnesses, Olivia's voice shook but held firm. This isn't who we are. It's exactly who I am. Preston adjusted his tie, his composure returning. I built this company from nothing. I clawed my way to the top, and I won't apologize for expecting standards. He turned back to Rebecca, who was trembling so hard her cart rattled. You're off today's schedule. Go home. Think about whether bringing unauthorized personnel to my workplace is worth your job. Please, Mr. Montgomery. Rebecca's voice broke. I need this job. I don't care what you need. Preston's voice was ice. I care about what I need. Professional employees who understand boundaries. Can you be that person, Rebecca? Or do we need to have a more permanent conversation? Rebecca's face crumpled. Parker watched his mother, his strong, tireless, unbreakable mother, fold in on herself, like paper in fire. Tears she'd been holding back spilled over, running down her cheeks in silent streams. We'll go, Parker said quietly. Come on, Mom. Let's go. He took her hand, her rough, chemical-scarred hand, and began leading her toward the exit. That's when Preston said it, loud enough for everyone to hear, designed for maximum impact. You know, Rebecca, there's always work for people like you. Toilets will always need cleaning. Floors will always need mopping. It's honest work. He paused, that cruel smile playing at his lips. For honest people who know their limitations. The words hung in the air like poison. 30 employees watched mother and son walk out. Some looked away in shame. Others whispered. A few pulled out phones. One person recorded everything. The video was online within an hour. Millionaire CEO humiliates poor child and single mother. By noon, it had 50,000 views. By evening, 500,000. The comment section exploded. This is disgusting. Who treats people like this? That little boy showed more dignity than that millionaire ever will. Someone find out where this is. We need to do something. The mom's face when she started crying. I can't stop watching this. It's heartbreaking. But none of that mattered yet. Not to Parker, who sat in their tiny apartment staring at his hands. Not to Rebecca, who couldn't stop crying. Not to Thomas, who held his wife while rage and helplessness warred in his chest. What mattered was that something fundamental had shifted. Parker had stood up. He had spoken truth. And even though it had changed nothing in that moment, Preston was still rich, they were still poor, humiliation still burned like acid. Something inside the 11-year-old boy had awakened. A stubborn, fierce determination that whispered, "This isn't over." 3 days crawled past like years. Rebecca had been given administrative leave pending review, corporate speak for, "We're deciding whether to fire you." The money stopped immediately. Rent was due in a week. The refrigerator held 2 eggs, half a loaf of bread, and condiment packets from fast food restaurants. Thomas sold every friendship bracelet he'd made that month, limping from corner to corner on his bad leg. It brought in $43. Parker hadn't spoken much. He sat by the window reading a mathematics book, Mr. Sullivan. His old teacher, who'd visited once with donated supplies, had given him months ago. Number theory, probability, logic puzzles. His mind absorbed it all like desert sand drinking rain. On the third day, Rebecca's phone rang. Unknown number. Her hands shook as she answered. "Hello? Rebecca Mitchell?" A professional woman's voice. "Yes? This is Olivia Chen, Mr. Montgomery's executive assistant. He'd like you to come to the office tomorrow at 9 a.m. Alone. Rebecca's heart dropped. "Am I being terminated?" A pause. He didn't say. But, "Rebecca, be prepared for anything." The line went dead. The next morning, Rebecca rode the bus alone. Her stomach churned. Her hands wouldn't stop trembling. She'd worn her best outfit, which was still threadbare, still marked by poverty, but clean and pressed. Preston's office was on the 52nd floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased the city sprawling below like a kingdom. His desk was mahogany. Real mahogany. Worth more than Rebecca's annual salary. He didn't look up when she entered. "Close the door." She did. Preston gestured to a large metallic safe sitting on the credenza. Industrial, imposing, with a complex digital panel on its front. "Arrived 4 days ago. Special courier. Contains bearer bonds worth $100 million. Inheritance from a distant relative I'd forgotten existed." Rebecca had no idea why he was telling her this. "Problem is," Preston continued, irritation creeping into his voice, "the safe has a custom security system. Not a traditional combination. Mathematical puzzles, logic sequences, pattern recognition." He stood, pacing like a caged animal. "My executive team tried for 2 days. Harvard MBAs, MIT engineers, all failed." He turned to face her, and Rebecca saw something she'd never seen in Preston Montgomery's eyes before. Embarrassment. "I hired consultants, cryptographers, safe experts. Nobody can crack it. Do you understand what that means? I'm sitting on $100 million I can't access because I can't solve a puzzle." Rebecca still didn't understand why she was here. "This morning, I made an announcement," Preston said. $1 million to any employee who can open this safe. Anyone can try. No restrictions. $1 million. Rebecca's mind reeled. That was freedom, security, Parker's education, Thomas's surgery, everything. "Why are you telling me this?" she whispered. Preston's smile was thin, calculating. "Because despite my strong personality, I recognize loyalty. You've worked here 3 years without a single complaint. You're reliable, thorough, and honestly," he shrugged, "you could use the money." It felt like a trap. Every instinct screamed danger. "If you want to try," Preston continued, "you can. Bring anyone you trust to look at it. Any expert you know." Rebecca heard herself say something impossible. "May I bring my son?" Preston's expression froze. "Your son? The kid from the lobby?" "Yes." "Rebecca." He laughed, actually laughed. "This puzzle has defeated professional cryptographers, people with doctorates. You think a child who doesn't even go to school anymore?" "He's very intelligent," Rebecca interrupted, surprising herself. "With numbers, patterns. He sees things other people miss." Preston studied her for a long moment. Then his smile widened into something predatory. "You know what? Let's make this interesting." He picked up his phone, pressed the intercom. "Olivia, company-wide announcement. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., open challenge in the main conference room. Anyone, and I mean anyone, can attempt to open the safe. Employees, contractors even." He looked directly at Rebecca. "Family members." He hung up, eyes glittering with malicious amusement. "Here's my new offer, Rebecca. If your son, your 11-year-old barefoot, uneducated son, can open this safe," Preston paused dramatically, "I'll give him the entire contents. Not 1 million, 100 million. The air left Rebecca's lungs. "That's insane," she whispered. "It's brilliant," Preston corrected. "Think about it. The optics are perfect. I offer a life-changing amount to a poor child. I look generous. And when he inevitably fails, which he will, it teaches everyone a valuable lesson about knowing their limitations, about not reaching above their station." His smile was razor-sharp. "Either way, I win." If by some miracle he succeeds, I'm the generous billionaire who gave a poor kid a fortune. If he fails, which is what will happen, he learns humility. You learn humility. Everyone gets reminded of how the world actually works. Rebecca felt sick. This was a game to him. Her son's dignity was entertainment. What do you say, Rebecca? Want to give your boy his shot at the big time? Or admit that some people are meant to clean while others are meant to lead? She should say no. Should protect Parker from this public humiliation. Should walk out and find another job and never look back. But then she remembered. Parker solving her scheduling conflicts in his head. Parker reorganizing her cleaning supplies by chemical composition for maximum efficiency. Parker explaining to her why certain stains required specific treatments using vocabulary he'd taught himself from library books. Parker, who was brilliant in ways the world hadn't seen yet, because poverty had hidden him. We accept, Rebecca heard herself say. Preston's eyebrows shot up. He'd expected her to refuse. Seriously? Yes. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. Parker will be there. Excellent. Preston's grin was wolfish. This is going to be incredible. Make sure he's presentable. I'm inviting media, local news. This is a human interest story. Of course he was. Maximum humiliation required maximum audience. As Rebecca left, her legs barely held her. She'd either just given her son the opportunity of a lifetime, or set him up for the cruelest public failure an 11-year-old could experience. There was no way to know. Not yet. That evening, in their cramped apartment that smelled of mold and desperation, Rebecca told Thomas and Parker everything. Parker listened without interrupting. His face showed no emotion. He'd learned to hide feelings the way poor kids learn to hide hunger. When she finished, silence filled the room. You don't have to do this, Thomas said firmly, looking at his son. This man wants to humiliate you. This is a trap. I know, Parker said quietly. Then why? Because it's also an opportunity. Parker's brown eyes burned with something fierce. He thinks I'm going to fail. Everyone thinks I'm going to fail. And maybe I will. But maybe. He looked at his mother, her destroyed hands, her exhausted face, her eyes that held oceans of love despite drowning in worry. Maybe I won't. Rebecca knelt in front of her son, taking his small face in her scarred hands. Baby, if you fail, it changes nothing about who you are. You're brilliant. You're kind. I'm poor, Parker interrupted softly. And everyone treats us like we're stupid because of it. This is my chance to show them they're wrong. And if you can't open the safe, Parker thought for a moment. Then at least I tried. At least I stood up. At least I showed them I'm not afraid. Thomas pulled his son into a fierce hug, his own eyes wet. You're already braver than any man I've ever met. That night, Parker couldn't sleep. He stared at the water-stained ceiling of his tiny bedroom, listening to his parents whisper worried prayers in the next room. Tomorrow, everything would change. Either he'd open that safe and transform their lives forever, or he'd fail in front of cameras and crowds and prove Preston Montgomery right about poor kids knowing their limitations. Both possibilities terrified him, but only one thing terrified him more: doing nothing, staying invisible, accepting that this was all he'd ever be. So he made his choice. Tomorrow, he would try, and the whole world would watch. The conference room on the 52nd floor had never seen this many people. By 1:30 p.m., every chair was filled. Employees lined the walls, standing shoulder to shoulder, phones out and recording. Word had spread like wildfire, not just through Montgomery Enterprises, but across social media. The video of Preston humiliating Parker had gone viral, hitting 2 million views overnight. Local news had picked up the story. Millionaire CEO offers poor child $100 million after viral humiliation video. Now 3 camera crews jostled for position. Reporters adjusted their microphones. The air buzzed with anticipation, phones pinging with constant notifications as people live-streamed the event. Preston stood at the front of the room beside the imposing metallic safe, looking every inch the benevolent billionaire in his custom navy suit. His smile was camera-ready, his posture relaxed. He was in his element, the center of attention, controlling the narrative. Ladies and gentlemen, he addressed the crowd at precisely 2 p.m. Thank you for joining us for what might be the most unusual company event in Montgomery Enterprises history. Polite laughter rippled through the room. As most of you know, This safe contains bearer bonds worth $100 million. For the past week, it has defeated some of the brightest minds in the country. Cryptographers, engineers, problem-solving experts. He paused for dramatic effect. But today, we're opening this challenge to everyone, because I believe in giving opportunities. His eyes found Rebecca and Parker standing near the back, and his smile sharpened. To everyone. No matter their background, no matter their circumstances, everyone deserves a chance to prove what they're capable of. The crowd murmured appreciatively. To them, this was Preston Montgomery at his philanthropic best. Only Parker saw the mockery glittering in the man's eyes. Rebecca felt her son's hand tighten in hers. Parker had barely eaten that morning, too nervous, too terrified of what was coming. She'd dressed him in his only nice outfit, khaki pants with a patch on the knee that she'd tried to hide, a button-down shirt that was slightly too small, he'd grown since they bought it at the thrift store, and shoes borrowed from a neighbor's son because Parker's sneakers had holes. He looked neat, clean, painfully out of place among the designer clothes and expensive watches surrounding them. Before we begin, Preston continued, I want to introduce someone special, a young man whose viral moment this week captured national attention. Rebecca, Parker. Would you come up here, please? Every head turned. Parker felt 100 pairs of eyes lock onto him. His throat went dry, his palms sweated, but he forced his feet to move, one step after another, his mother's hand anchoring him to reality. The walk to the front of the room felt like miles. Preston's smile never wavered. Everyone, this is Rebecca Mitchell, one of our dedicated maintenance staff, and her son Parker. He placed a hand on Parker's shoulder, a gesture that looked warm to the cameras but felt like a weight trying to push him into the ground. Parker here believes he can open this safe, despite being 11 years old. Despite having no formal education in cryptography or mathematics. I read a lot, Parker interrupted, his voice quiet but clear. Preston's smile froze. He hadn't expected the boy to speak. I'm sorry. What was that? Parker lifted his chin, looking directly at Preston. I said I read a lot. About mathematics, logic, pattern recognition. Just because I don't go to school doesn't mean I'm not learning. The room went absolutely silent. Olivia, standing near the wall with her tablet, felt her heart clench. That boy, that brave, terrified boy, was standing up again, even knowing what happened last time, even knowing the entire world was watching. Preston recovered smoothly, his media training kicking in. Of course, self-education is admirable, and that's exactly why we're giving you this opportunity. He turned to the cameras. To show that talent can come from anywhere, that potential isn't limited by circumstances. The words were perfect, the delivery flawless. Parker heard what Preston wasn't saying. You're going to fail, and when you do, everyone will know that poor kids should stay in their place. So here's how this works, Preston addressed the crowd. Parker will have one attempt. If he opens the safe, he gets the entire contents, $100 million in bearer bonds. If he can't, Preston shrugged eloquently. Well, at least he tried. That's what matters, right? The effort? Several people nodded. Others looked uncomfortable, sensing the trap but unable to articulate it. Parker, whenever you're ready. Preston gestured to the safe with a flourish. Parker looked back at his mother. Rebecca's eyes were swimming with tears she refused to let fall. She nodded once, a tiny movement that said, I believe in you, and I'm sorry, and I love you all at once. Parker turned to the safe. It was massive up close, industrial steel with a brushed silver finish. The digital panel on its front glowed with soft blue light, displaying a complex interface unlike anything he'd seen before. Numbers scrolled across the top. Symbols blinked on the sides. In the center, a touchscreen showed what appeared to be a mathematical equation that changed every few seconds. His hands trembled as he reached toward it. Ladies and gentlemen, a news reporter spoke into her microphone. We're watching 11-year-old Parker Mitchell attempt to open a safe that has stumped experts for days. The tension in this room is palpable. His mother is visibly emotional. And Preston Montgomery looks confident that this young boy is about to learn a harsh lesson about... Shh, someone hissed. Let him concentrate. Parker blocked out the voices, the cameras, the crushing weight of expectation and mockery. He focused only on the panel in front of him. The equation changed. 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13. Prime numbers. He recognized the sequence immediately from the mathematics book Mr. Sullivan had given him. But it wasn't just listing primes. There was a pattern in how they appeared, spaces between them, a rhythm. His finger hovered over the touchscreen. "Is he actually going to—" someone whispered. "Quiet!" Olivia's voice cut through the murmurs. Parker touched the screen. The numbers shifted. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21. Fibonacci sequence. His breath caught. This wasn't a single puzzle, it was layers. Multiple sequences running simultaneously, interlocking, building on each other. Behind him, Preston's smile began to fade. The boy wasn't randomly pressing buttons. His movements were deliberate, thoughtful, calculated. Parker's mind raced. If the first layer was primes and the second was Fibonacci, what connected them? There had to be a relationship. Mathematical puzzles always had elegant solutions. Perfect squares. The third sequence appeared. 1, 4, 9, 16, 25, 36. His heart hammered. 3 sequences. 3 different number systems. But they weren't separate. They were coordinates. X, Y, Z axes. 3-dimensional positioning. He started touching numbers in specific order, combining values from each sequence. The panel beeped softly. Not an error tone, but acknowledgement. Confirmation that he was on the right track. The room held its collective breath. "Oh my God," Walter whispered from his position near the door. The senior accountant had seen Parker's intelligence firsthand, but this was beyond anything he'd imagined. "He's actually solving it." "No," Preston said sharply, too loud in the silent room. It's trial and error. He'll hit the error limit and—" The panel changed again. New challenge. A logic puzzle appeared on screen. "If all bloops are Razzies and all Razzies are Lazzies, then all bloops are definitely Lazzies, true or false?" Basic syllogistic logic. Parker had read about this in a philosophy book he'd found at the library. The answer was, he tapped true. The panel shifted to geometric symbols. Triangles, circles, squares, each containing numbers. The relationship between shape and value wasn't immediately obvious, but Parker studied the pattern. 3 sides equals 3. 4 sides equals 4. Circle was 0. No, infinity. The symbol for continuing, for wholeness. He began entering a sequence based on geometric properties. Another soft beep, another confirmation. Preston's face had gone pale. "This isn't possible. The puzzle was designed by a team of—" "Quiet," Olivia said sharply, shocking everyone, including herself. "Let him work." Parker was deep in the zone now. His entire world narrowed to the glowing panel. Everything he'd ever read, every puzzle he'd solved in his head while helping his mother clean, every late-night conversation with his father about logic and reason, it all converged in this moment. The panel presented a new challenge. The father of Sarah has 5 daughters. The first is named April. The second is May. The third is June. The fourth is July. What is the 5th daughter's name? It was a trick. A test to see if you'd follow the obvious pattern, August, or actually read the question. The 5th daughter was Sarah, stated in the first sentence. Parker typed Sarah. The safe emitted a series of mechanical clicks. Everyone jumped. The lights on the panel cycled from blue to yellow to green. The word "access granted" appeared on the screen. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. Nobody could quite process what they'd just witnessed. Then the room exploded. "He did it!" someone screamed. "Oh my God, he actually— that's impossible! Did you get that on camera? The kid just won $100 million! The noise was deafening. Shouts, applause, phones being thrust forward to capture the moment. News reporters shouted into their microphones trying to be heard over the chaos. Camera crews fought for better angles. Parker stood frozen, staring at the green words on the screen, unable to believe what he'd just done. Rebecca broke through the crowd, grabbing her son and pulling him into a fierce embrace. She was sobbing. Great, heaving sobs of relief and joy and disbelief. "You did it, baby. You did it. Oh God, you actually did it." Thomas, watching the live stream from their apartment on a phone borrowed from a neighbor, collapsed into his chair, tears streaming down his face. "That's my boy," he whispered. That's my brilliant boy. Preston Montgomery stood absolutely motionless, staring at the safe like it had personally betrayed him. His face cycled through emotions: shock, denial, fury, horror, as the full implications crashed over him. He'd made the bet publicly, on camera, in front of witnesses and media. He'd promised $100 million, and now he had to pay it. To an 11-year-old boy he'd humiliated and mocked and never believed could succeed. Walter pushed through the crowd, his elderly face split in a grin so wide it looked painful. "Parker, my boy, that was extraordinary. Absolutely extraordinary." Olivia was crying too, not even trying to hide it anymore. She'd watched Preston bully people for years, had been powerless to stop it, had hated herself for her silence. And now this child, this brave, brilliant child, had done what she never could. He'd beaten Preston Montgomery at his own game. The news reporter thrust her microphone toward Parker, who was still clinging to his mother. Parker Mitchell, how does it feel to have just won $100 million? Parker looked up, his eyes wide and dazed. I don't know. It doesn't feel real." "What are you going to do with the money?" Before Parker could answer, Preston's voice cut through the celebration like a blade. "This doesn't count." The room fell silent instantly. Preston stood with his arms crossed, his face twisted with barely controlled rage. "This is invalid. The challenge was compromised. Someone clearly gave him the answers beforehand. There's no other explanation." The crowd erupted in protests. "That's ridiculous. We all watched him solve it. You can't back out now." "Sir," Olivia stepped forward, her voice shaking but determined. "With all due respect, we have footage from 3 different cameras showing Parker solving the puzzle in real time. No one helped him. No one gave him answers. He did it himself." "Then it was luck," Preston snapped. "Random guessing that happened too." "It wasn't luck." Walter's quiet voice somehow carried over the noise. "I watched his process. He identified 3 separate number sequences, understood their relationship, solved a logic puzzle, decoded geometric symbolism, and avoided a linguistic trap. That's not luck, Preston. That's brilliance." "He's 11 years old." Preston's composure finally shattered. "He doesn't even go to school. There's no way he legitimately—" "You made a promise." Rebecca's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. She stood between Preston and her son, her destroyed hands clenched into fists, her exhausted eyes blazing with something fierce and unstoppable. "In front of all these witnesses, on camera, you said if my son opened that safe, he'd get everything inside. He opened it. Now you need to honor your word." "Your word?" Preston laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about honor? Your son is a fraud. This whole thing is a—" "Choose your next words very carefully," a new voice interrupted. Everyone turned. A man in an expensive suit stood in the doorway, tall, distinguished, with silver hair and the bearing of someone used to being obeyed. He held up credentials. "Daniel Richardson, senior partner at Richardson & Associates Legal Counsel. I've been retained to observe these proceedings and ensure contract law is upheld." He looked directly at Preston. "You made a verbal contract in front of multiple witnesses and recording devices. That contract specified that if Parker Mitchell opened the safe, he would receive its entire contents. The boy has fulfilled his obligation. Now you must fulfill yours." Preston's face went from red to purple. "This is a setup. Someone hired you to—" "Actually," Daniel smiled slightly, "I hired myself. Pro bono. I saw the viral video of you humiliating this child and his mother. I saw your public announcement about the challenge, and I wanted to ensure that if this young man succeeded against all odds, he'd receive what he was promised." He pulled out a tablet, showing Preston a document. "This is a preliminary contract based on your recorded statements. You have 48 hours to transfer the bearer bonds to a trust account in Parker Mitchell's name, or face breach of contract litigation. The penalties for which, given the public nature of this agreement and the media coverage, would be substantial." Preston stared at the tablet, his hands trembling. "You can't. This isn't—" "It's enforceable," Daniel said calmly. "And if you refuse, every major news outlet in the country will run the story. Billionaire refuses to pay, child after losing bet. How do you think that will affect Montgomery Enterprises, your board of directors, your shareholders?" The threat hung in the air like smoke. Preston looked around the room, at the cameras still recording, at the employees watching with a mixture of satisfaction and horror, at the news reporters already typing furiously on their phones. He was trapped. Completely, utterly trapped. His own arrogance had built the cage. His own cruelty had locked the door, and a barefoot 11-year-old boy had turned the key. "Fine," Preston said through clenched teeth. "I'll honor the agreement. The bonds will be transferred within 48 hours. The room erupted again, this time in pure celebration. People clapped, shouted, hugged each other. Someone started chanting Parker's name. Others joined in. "Parker! Parker! Parker!" The boy stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed, terrified, elated, and completely unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. His mother held him tight, whispering prayers of gratitude into his hair. His father, miles away in their tiny apartment, wept openly. And Preston Montgomery stood alone, isolated even in a room full of his own employees, staring at the open safe that had just cost him $100 million and possibly something even more valuable. His reputation as the smartest man in the room. That night, the video went mega viral. Not just the ending, though Parker opening the safe was shared millions of times, but the entire sequence. People watched him solve the puzzle with growing amazement. Experts analyzed his method, stunned by the sophistication of his approach. "This child is operating at a university level," one mathematics professor commented in a response video. "The pattern recognition, the logical sequencing, the ability to see relationships between disparate number systems, this is exceptional. I have a PhD in cryptography," another expert posted, "and I'm not sure I could have solved that puzzle as quickly as this 11-year-old did." The story dominated news cycles. Genius boy wins 100 meters after viral humiliation. Poor child solves impossible puzzle, defeats billionaire CEO. The barefoot mathematician, Parker Mitchell's incredible story. Comments poured in by the thousands. That moment when his mom hugs him and they're both crying. "I lost it." Preston Montgomery's face when that safe opened. He looked like he'd seen a ghost. This boy just changed his entire family's life in 10 minutes. That's incredible. The way he stood up to that bully even knowing he might fail. That's real courage. I teach gifted students, and Parker is operating at a level I rarely see. Someone get this kid into the best school in the country. But not all comments were positive. This feels staged. No way a poor kid with no education just happens to be a math genius. He clearly had help. Someone gave him the answers. The real crime is that he's been out of school. Where is CPS? Montgomery should sue. This is fraud. Parker didn't see any of it. He was at home, sitting between his parents on their worn couch, trying to understand that their lives had just fundamentally changed. $100 million, Thomas kept repeating, like the words would make more sense if he said them enough times. $100 million. What do we do with it? Rebecca's voice was small, frightened. How do we even... Where do we start? A knock on their apartment door made them all jump. Thomas limped to answer it, finding Daniel Richardson standing in the hallway looking completely out of place in the rundown building. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell, Parker, may I come in? We need to discuss next steps." They let him in, this stranger who'd appeared like a guardian angel when they needed one most. Daniel sat in their only chair, unfazed by the peeling wallpaper and water-stained ceiling. "First, congratulations, Parker. What you did today was remarkable." "Thank you, sir." "Second, we need to move quickly. Preston will look for any loophole, any technicality to avoid payment. But the law is on your side." He pulled out papers. "I'm proposing we establish a trust immediately. The bonds will be transferred into it, managed by independent trustees. You'll have access to funds, but they'll be protected from—" "Why are you helping us?" Rebecca interrupted. "We can't pay you. We don't have anything." Daniel smiled sadly. 20 years ago, I was a poor kid from the wrong side of town. A public defender saw something in me, helped me get into law school, changed my entire life. I've been looking for a way to pay that forward." He looked at Parker. "When I saw that video of you standing up to Preston, I knew I'd found my chance. But this must cost—" "Pro bono means free," Daniel said gently. "I don't want your money, Rebecca. I want to make sure your brilliant son gets every opportunity he deserves. And that starts with protecting this gift he's earned." Rebecca started crying again. Not sad tears this time. but overwhelmed, grateful tears. There's something else, Daniel continued. The media attention is going to be intense. Every news outlet will want interviews. Your phone will ring constantly. People will come out of nowhere claiming to be long-lost relatives. You need to be prepared. We're not prepared for any of this, Thomas said honestly. We're just regular people. Regular people who raised an extraordinary son, Daniel corrected. But you're right. You'll need support. I've taken the liberty of contacting a few colleagues, financial advisors, security consultants, educational specialists, all willing to help pro bono or at minimal cost. Parker listened to the adults talk, his mind still spinning. This morning he'd been poor, anonymous, invisible. Tonight he was, what? Rich? Famous? Different? Mr. Richardson, Parker spoke up. What happens to my mom's job? The room fell silent. I mean, Parker continued, Mr. Montgomery is really mad. Will he fire her? Can he do that? Daniel's expression turned grim. Technically, he could find a reason to terminate her employment. However, given the public nature of this situation, any retaliation would be legally actionable and PR suicide. But he could still try, Parker said quietly. He could, but then Mom should quit, Parker said firmly. She shouldn't have to work for someone who hates us. Rebecca knelt in front of her son. Baby, we don't know how long this money will last. I can't just… Mom. Parker took her scarred hands in his small ones. You have worked so hard for so long. Your hands are destroyed. Your back hurts every night. You come home exhausted and still make dinner and help Dad and never complain. Please, let me take care of you now. Let this money mean you never have to scrub another toilet unless you want to. Rebecca dissolved into sobs, pulling Parker close. Thomas joined them, wrapping his family in his arms despite the pain in his leg. Daniel looked away, giving them privacy, his own eyes suspiciously bright. After a long moment, Rebecca pulled back, wiping her eyes. Okay, I'll resign. Effective immediately. And Parker needs to go back to school, Thomas added. The best school we can find. This brilliance of his, it deserves to be developed, not hidden. I have some thoughts on that, Daniel said. But first, we protect the money. Then we plan the future, one step at a time. They talked for hours, making plans, discussing possibilities, slowly beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, everything really had changed. 2 blocks away, in a luxury high-rise apartment, Preston Montgomery sat alone in the dark. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. Board members, investors, PR consultants, all wanting to know the same thing. What was he thinking? How could he let this happen? He'd ignored them all. The bearer bonds sat on his desk, still sealed in their official envelope. $100 million. Money that should have been his. Money that would have expanded his empire, solidified his legacy, proven his worth. Instead, it would go to a poor kid who'd gotten lucky. Except, it hadn't been luck. Preston had watched the security footage a dozen times. Parker's solution had been methodical, intelligent, sophisticated. The boy had legitimately solved a puzzle that defeated actual experts, which meant one of two things. Either Parker Mitchell was genuinely brilliant, or Preston Montgomery wasn't as smart as he'd always believed. Both options were unbearable. His phone buzzed. Another call. This time he answered. What? Mr. Montgomery, it's Olivia. Sir, we need to discuss damage control. The media is… I don't care about the media. You should. The board is talking about calling an emergency meeting. Shareholders are nervous. Our stock dropped 3 points today. Because I kept my word? Preston laughed bitterly. Because I honored a bet I made publicly? Because you made the bet in the first place, Olivia said quietly. Because the viral video shows you humiliating a child. Because people are questioning your judgment, your character, your… That's enough. No, sir, it's not. Olivia's voice strengthened. I've worked for you for 6 years. I've watched you be cruel to people who didn't deserve it. I've stayed silent because I needed the job. But watching you with that family, with that brilliant boy and his hardworking mother, I realized something. Your money doesn't make you better than them. It just makes you richer. And honestly, I'd rather be poor with dignity than wealthy with your conscience. Preston felt like he'd been slapped. Are you quitting? Yes. Effective immediately. Consider this my resignation." "You can't. I'll blacklist you. You'll never work in this industry again." "Then I'll work in another industry," Olivia said calmly. "I'd rather serve coffee than serve someone who treats people like you do. Goodbye, Mr. Montgomery." The line went dead. Preston stared at his phone, genuinely shocked. Olivia had been loyal, competent, irreplaceable, and she'd just walked away. Because of him. Because of how he'd treated a child and his mother. For the first time in 20 years, Preston Montgomery felt something he'd almost forgotten existed: shame. The transfer happened exactly 47 hours and 32 minutes after Parker opened the safe. Daniel Richardson stood in the lobby of First National Bank alongside Rebecca, Thomas, and Parker, watching as bank officials verified the bearer bonds. Each certificate was examined under specialized lights, codes cross-referenced with federal databases, security features authenticated with equipment that looked like it belonged in a science fiction movie. Parker's hands wouldn't stop shaking. He sat between his parents on a leather bench that was nicer than any furniture they'd ever owned, staring at his borrowed shoes and trying to process that the pieces of paper being inspected so carefully represented more money than most people saw in 10 lifetimes. "Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell," the senior bank manager, a woman named Patricia Chen with kind eyes and graying hair, approached with a folder. "Everything has been authenticated. The bonds are legitimate. We're ready to proceed with the trust establishment." Rebecca's grip on Thomas's hand tightened until her knuckles went white. "It's really real," she whispered. "This is actually happening." Thomas couldn't speak. His throat was too tight, his eyes too blurry with tears he kept trying to blink away. His son, his brilliant, brave son, had just secured their family's future with nothing but his mind and his courage. Patricia sat across from them, her professional demeanor softening when she saw Parker's terrified expression. "Parker, do you understand what's happening today?" The boy nodded slowly. "The money is going into a special account that will keep it safe. Mr. Richardson will make sure nobody can steal it or trick us out of it." "That's exactly right." Patricia smiled. "You're a very smart young man, and very lucky." "He's not lucky," Daniel interjected firmly. "He's exceptional. Luck implies he didn't earn this." Parker solved an impossible puzzle through intelligence and skill. "Let's make sure we acknowledge that distinction." Patricia's cheeks colored slightly. "You're absolutely correct. I apologize, Parker. You earned every penny of this through your own abilities." Parker looked up at her, surprised. Adults didn't usually apologize to him. Adults usually didn't see him at all. The paperwork took 2 hours. Signatures on dozens of documents, explanations of trust structures and fiduciary responsibilities, discussions of tax implications and investment strategies that made Rebecca's head spin. Daniel translated everything into plain language, ensuring they understood each decision before signing. "The trust is structured so Parker will receive full control when he turns 25, Daniel explained. "Until then, distributions can be made for education, healthcare, housing, and other essential needs. Rebecca and Thomas, you're named as co-trustees along with myself and a representative from the bank. No major decisions can be made without majority approval." "What about Preston?" Thomas asked, the name leaving a bitter taste in his mouth. "Can he challenge this? Try to take it back?" "He can try," Daniel said with a slight smile. "But the contract is ironclad. The media coverage alone makes it legally unassailable. If he attempted to reclaim the funds, the public backlash would destroy what's left of his reputation." "What's left?" Rebecca asked. Daniel pulled out his phone, showing them news articles. The headlines made her gasp. "Montgomery Enterprises stock drops 12% after CEO's viral humiliation. Board of Directors calls emergency meeting over Preston Montgomery's behavior. Employees speak out. He's always been a bully. 3 major clients terminate contracts with Montgomery Enterprises. Preston Montgomery is facing consequences," Daniel said quietly. "Real ones. His cruelty was always there, but having it captured on video and broadcast to millions changed everything. People are holding him accountable." Parker felt something complicated twist in his chest. He'd wanted Preston to face justice for how he'd treated his mother, but seeing the man's entire world crumbling felt heavier than he'd expected. "Does that make me a bad person?" Parker asked suddenly. "That I feel kind of sorry for him?" The adults looked at him in surprise. "Baby, why would you—" Rebecca began. Because he's losing everything. His company, his reputation, maybe his whole life. And it's because of me. Thomas knelt in front of his son despite the pain it caused his bad leg. Parker, listen to me. Preston Montgomery's consequences are because of Preston Montgomery's choices. You didn't make him cruel. You didn't make him humiliate you and your mother in front of witnesses. You didn't make him gamble $100 million on a bet he never thought he'd lose. But, no buts. Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. You responded to cruelty with intelligence, to humiliation with grace, to impossible odds with courage. His choices created this situation. Your brilliance just revealed who he really was, underneath all that money and power. Patricia, who'd been listening quietly, added, If it helps, Parker, empathy is a gift. The fact that you can feel compassion even for someone who hurt you badly, that speaks to your character. Don't lose that. The world needs more people who can be both strong and kind. Parker nodded slowly, processing this. It would take time to understand all the complicated feelings swirling inside him. All right, Daniel said, standing and extending his hand to Parker. The trust is established. $100 million, safely protected and ready to build your future. What do you say we celebrate? Celebrate how? Parker asked. Daniel's smile widened. How about we start by getting you some shoes that actually fit? The shopping trip was surreal. Daniel drove them to an upscale mall in a part of the city they'd never visited, where stores had doormen and displayed single items like they were museum pieces. Rebecca clutched her purse nervously, hyper-aware of their thrift store clothes among the designer-clad shoppers. I don't know if we belong here, she whispered to Thomas as they entered a children's clothing store, where a single shirt cost more than their weekly grocery budget used to be. We belong anywhere we want to belong now, Thomas replied, but his voice shook slightly. He was uncomfortable too, his construction worker hands and faded jeans marking him as different from the wealthy parents browsing racks of miniature designer outfits. A saleswoman approached with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Can I help you find something? The unspoken question hung in the air. Can you actually afford anything here? Yes, Daniel said smoothly, his lawyer's authority filling the space. We need a complete wardrobe for this young man. School clothes, casual wear, formal attire, quality items that will last. The saleswoman's gaze shifted to Parker, taking in his two small borrowed shoes, his patched pants, his threadbare shirt, and her smile became genuinely condescending. Perhaps you'd be more comfortable at one of our outlet locations. They have very reasonable prices for... We're comfortable here, Rebecca interrupted, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Please show us your best options. Something in Rebecca's tone, quiet strength wrapped in dignity, made the saleswoman pause. She looked closer at the group, noting Daniel's expensive suit, the way he stood protectively near the family, the confidence in his posture. Of course, right this way. For the next hour, Parker tried on clothes he'd only seen in store windows. Jeans that fit perfectly, shirts in soft fabrics that didn't scratch, a winter coat that was warm without being bulky, shoes, multiple pairs, that supported his feet instead of pinching them. Rebecca cried when she saw her son in a simple outfit of nice jeans and a button-down shirt that actually fit his growing frame. You look so handsome, baby. Mom, it's just clothes, Parker said, embarrassed but pleased. It's not just clothes, Thomas corrected, his own eyes wet. It's the first time in years you've had something new. Something that's yours, that fits, that you didn't have to borrow or make do with. The total came to just over $2,000. Rebecca's hand trembled as she held the credit card Daniel had given them, linked to the trust, with a reasonable monthly limit for necessities. Swipe it, Daniel encouraged. This is exactly what the money is for, taking care of Parker's needs. She did, and when the transaction approved, she felt something inside her chest unlock. For years, every purchase had been an agonizing calculation. Can we afford this? What will we have to sacrifice? How long can we make it last? Now, for the first time, the answer was simply, yes, they could afford it, without sacrifice, without fear. Next stop, Daniel announced as they loaded shopping bags into his car. Lunch, and not fast food, a real restaurant. The restaurant was beautiful. White tablecloths, actual cloth napkins, menus without pictures or prices. Parker had never been anywhere like it. He watched other diners using multiple forks, uncertain which one to use first. Outside in, Thomas whispered, having looked this up once out of curiosity. Start with the outermost fork and work your way in. A waiter approached, young and professionally pleasant. He started to hand menus to the adults, then paused when he looked at Parker. Wait, are you the kid from the video? The one who opened the safe? Parker froze, heat rushing to his face. That's incredible. The waiter's enthusiasm was genuine. Man, everyone's been talking about you. The way you stood up to that billionaire and then solved that impossible puzzle? You're like a superhero or something. I'm not a superhero, Parker mumbled. I'm good with numbers. Just good with numbers, the waiter repeated with a laugh. Dude, you're a genius. My little brother wants to be like you now. He's been doing math puzzles all week, trying to get better. Parker looked up, surprised. Really? Really? You inspired him. Inspired a lot of kids, actually. Showed them that being smart is cool, that standing up to bullies matters, that where you come from doesn't define where you can go. After the waiter left to get their drinks, Parker sat quietly, processing this new information. He'd thought the video would make him a joke, a poor kid who got lucky. He hadn't considered that people might see him as inspirational. You're impacting lives, son, Thomas said softly. People you'll never meet are being changed by your story. The meal was delicious. Parker had never tasted food like this, but more than the food, he savored something else. Normalcy. Sitting with his family in a nice place, not worrying about the bill, not feeling out of place, just being. Halfway through the meal, Rebecca's phone rang. Unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. Hello? Mrs. Mitchell? This is Carol Henderson from Westbrook Academy. I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time. Rebecca's heart skipped. Westbrook Academy was one of the most prestigious private schools in the state. No, not at all. How can I help you? Actually, I'm calling because we'd like to help you. Or rather, help Parker. We saw the news coverage and our board of directors held an emergency meeting. We'd like to offer Parker a full scholarship to Westbrook, effective immediately. Rebecca nearly dropped her phone. I'm sorry, what? Full scholarship, tuition, books, supplies, even transportation if needed. We have a program for exceptionally gifted students, and Parker's abilities are, well, extraordinary doesn't seem like a strong enough word. But he hasn't been in school for over a year. He's behind, Mrs. Mitchell, Carol's voice was warm. I've reviewed the footage of him solving that puzzle. His mathematical reasoning is years beyond his age level. I guarantee you Parker isn't behind. If anything, traditional curriculum might bore him. We have resources for students like him. Advanced programs, specialized teachers. He could thrive here. Rebecca looked at her son, who was watching her with cautious hope. Can we think about it? Visit the campus, maybe? Of course. How about tomorrow? I'll give you a personal tour and Parker can meet some of our students and faculty. After she hung up, Rebecca relayed the conversation. Parker's eyes went wide. Westbrook Academy, that's where... He trailed off, not wanting to sound presumptuous. Where brilliant kids go, Thomas finished. Where you deserve to be. But what if I can't keep up? What if everyone there is smarter than me and... Parker! Daniel's voice cut through the spiral of anxiety. You solved a puzzle that defeated Harvard graduates. You stood in front of cameras and critics and pressure that would crush most adults. You have nothing to prove to anyone. Except myself, Parker whispered. Except yourself, Daniel agreed. And that's the only opinion that truly matters. That evening, back in their apartment, though Daniel had mentioned looking for a new place soon, the family sat together processing everything that had happened in just a few days. Thomas's phone buzzed. A text from an old construction buddy. Saw the news. Your kid is amazing. So proud of you guys. Then another. Parker is an inspiration. You raised him right. And another. Tell Parker he made this old man cry. What a brave kid. The messages kept coming. People they'd lost touch with. Former neighbors. Distant relatives suddenly remembering they existed. Some messages felt genuine. Others felt opportunistic. We need to be careful, Daniel had warned them earlier. Sudden wealth attracts all kinds of attention. Not all of it good. Rebecca's phone rang again. This time she recognized the number. Her sister Linda, who hadn't spoken to her in 5 years after a family argument. Don't answer it, Thomas said quietly. It's my sister. Who told you that you were throwing your life away marrying me? Who said Parker would never amount to anything without a better father figure? Who hasn't called once since my accident to see if we were okay? Rebecca stared at the ringing phone, emotions warring inside her. Family was family, but Thomas was right. Linda had been cruel when they needed support, and now, suddenly, when they had money, she declined the call. I'm proud of you, Thomas said. It hurt. I know, but some bridges are burned for good reasons. Parker, who'd been quiet, spoke up. Mr. Richardson said people would come out of nowhere. Is that happening already? Yes, Rebecca admitted. But that's okay. We know who really cares about us, who was there when we had nothing. Those are the people who matter. A knock at the door interrupted them. Thomas tensed. They weren't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, he saw Walter, the accountant from Montgomery Enterprises, holding what looked like a casserole dish. It's Walter, Thomas said, surprised, opening the door. I hope I'm not intruding, Walter said, looking slightly embarrassed. I wanted to bring you folks some dinner. Homemade lasagna, my late wife's recipe. His eyes were warm, genuine. And I wanted to tell Parker something. Please come in, Rebecca said, touched by the gesture. Walter set the lasagna down and knelt, with difficulty, his elderly knees protesting, in front of Parker. Young man, I've worked in corporate America for 43 years. I've met hundreds of brilliant people, CEOs, executives, consultants with fancy degrees and expensive suits. He paused, his voice thick with emotion. But I have never, and I mean never, met anyone with more character, intelligence, and courage than you showed in that conference room. You didn't just open a safe, Parker. You opened people's eyes. You reminded us that human worth isn't measured in bank accounts or job titles. You made us remember what really matters. Tears streamed down Walter's weathered face. Thank you. Thank you for showing this old man that there's still good in the world, that David can still beat Goliath, that kindness and brilliance can come from the most unexpected places. Parker threw his arms around Walter, hugging the old man tightly. Thank you for always being nice to my mom, for seeing us when everyone else looked through us like we were invisible. You were never invisible to me, Walter whispered. Never. When Walter left, refusing any payment for the lasagna, insisting it was a gift from the heart, the family sat down to eat. The food was delicious, but more than that, it was made with love, given freely, without expectation of return. This is what money can't buy, Thomas said, savoring a bite. Genuine kindness, real friendship, people who care about you for who you are, not what you have. We're going to remember this, Rebecca said firmly. When we move to a nicer place, when Parker goes to that fancy school, when our lives change on the outside, we're going to remember who we are on the inside. We're going to remember Walter bringing us lasagna, Daniel helping us for free, Patricia at the bank treating us with dignity. Those are the things that matter. Parker nodded, but something was still bothering him. Mom, can I ask you something? Anything, baby. What's going to happen to Mr. Montgomery? The question hung in the air like smoke. Rebecca and Thomas exchanged glances. They'd been wondering the same thing but hadn't wanted to bring it up. I don't know, Rebecca answered honestly. His company is in trouble. His reputation is destroyed. People are holding him accountable for years of cruelty. Do you think he's sorry? Sorry he got caught, Thomas said. Probably. Sorry for his actual behavior? I'm not sure he's capable of that kind of self-reflection. But what if he is? Parker's voice was small. What if he's sitting somewhere right now realizing he was wrong? That he hurt people? What if he wants to be better but doesn't know how? Rebecca pulled her son close. Then that's his journey to make. You can't fix him, Parker. You can't save someone who doesn't want to be saved. All you can do is be the best version of yourself and hope that inspires others to do the same. But no buts. Thomas's voice was gentle but firm. Preston Montgomery is a grown man. Whatever consequences he's facing, whatever soul-searching he's doing, that's on him. Your responsibility is to yourself, your family, and your future. Let Preston worry about Preston. Parker wanted to argue, to explain the complicated feelings churning inside him. But he was 11 and exhausted and overwhelmed by too many emotions to name. So instead, he leaned against his mother, letting her arms anchor him to reality, and tried to believe that tomorrow, with all its possibilities and promises, would make sense of today's chaos. Outside their apartment, the city glittered with lights. Somewhere out there, Preston Montgomery sat in darkness, confronting demons he'd spent decades ignoring. Somewhere out there, Olivia was updating her resume, determined to find work that didn't compromise her conscience. Somewhere out there, Walter was calling his daughter to tell her about the brave boy he'd met, his voice full of hope that maybe the world wasn't as broken as it sometimes seemed. And in a small apartment that would soon be just a memory, a family held each other tight, grateful for survival, hopeful for the future, and determined to never forget the journey that had brought them here. The money would change their circumstances, but their character, forged in hardship, strengthened by love, proven in crisis, would remain unshakable. That was worth more than any amount sitting in any safe. Westbrook Academy looked like something from a movie. Stone buildings covered in ivy stretched across manicured lawns, so green they seemed almost artificial. Students in pressed uniforms walked between classes carrying leather bags, their conversations peppered with references to advanced placement courses and college preparatory programs. Tennis courts gleamed in the morning sun. The library, visible through tall windows, held more books than Parker had seen in his entire life combined. Rebecca gripped Thomas's hand so tightly her knuckles went white as they walked through the main entrance. She'd worn her best outfit, a simple dress she'd bought the day before, still modest but new and clean in hers. Thomas had a slight limp still, but he walked with his head high, determined not to show the intimidation crawling up his spine. Parker wore his new jeans and a polo shirt that actually fit, but he felt like an imposter. Like someone would point at him any second and shout that he didn't belong here, that this was a mistake, that poor kids from broken-down apartments had no place in halls where even the air smelled expensive. The Mitchell family. Welcome. Carol Henderson appeared like sunshine given human form. A woman in her 50s with silver-streaked hair, warm brown skin, and a smile that crinkled the corners of her eyes. She wore a simple blouse and slacks, sensible shoes, and an ease that came from decades of working with children. "Thank you for having us," Rebecca said, her voice steadier than she felt. "The pleasure is entirely ours." Carol shook each of their hands, then knelt to Parker's level. "And you must be the young man who's been making headlines. How are you holding up with all this attention?" "It's weird," Parker admitted. "Everyone keeps staring at me. I imagine it is weird. Fame, even temporary fame, is a lot for adults to handle. For an 11-year-old? I can't imagine." She stood, gesturing for them to follow. "Come, let me show you what Westbrook is really about." They walked through hallways lined with student artwork, past classrooms where engaged discussions filled the air, through a science lab where teenagers conducted experiments that looked like they belonged in universities. Everything was clean, orderly, abundant. Parker noticed something else too: diversity. Students of every background, every skin tone, every economic level mixed together in the hallways. A girl in designer clothes laughed with another whose shoes looked nearly as worn as Parker's old ones had been. "Westbrook has a robust scholarship program," Carol explained, noticing Parker's observation. 40% of our students are here on full or partial financial aid. We believe intelligence doesn't discriminate based on wealth. Talent appears everywhere. Our job is to nurture it wherever we find it." She stopped in front of a classroom where a teacher was explaining advanced algebraic concepts to a group of middle schoolers. "This is our accelerated mathematics program. Students work at their own pace, often several grade levels ahead of traditional curriculum." Parker watched through the window, mesmerized. The teacher wrote equations on the board that he recognized from his library books. Students raised hands eagerly, competing to solve problems. Their enthusiasm was contagious. "Could I really learn here?" Parker whispered. "Parker," Carol said gently, "you could teach here. I've reviewed your problem-solving approach on that safe. Your mathematical intuition is extraordinary. The question isn't whether you could learn, it's whether we can keep up with you." They continued the tour. The art room overflowed with creative projects. The music wing held instruments Parker had only seen in pictures. The athletic facilities were state-of-the-art. But what struck him most was the library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves stretched in every direction, comfortable chairs nestled in quiet corners. Computer stations lined one wall, and the silence wasn't oppressive. It was peaceful, sacred even. The silence of a place where knowledge was respected and curiosity was celebrated. "Can I look around?" Parker asked, his voice hushed. "Of course. Take your time." Parker wandered through the stacks, fingers trailing along book spines. Advanced physics, number theory, philosophy, history, fiction that won awards, poetry in multiple languages. Everything he'd ever wanted to read and thousands of things he'd never known existed. He pulled out a book on quantum mechanics, flipping through pages dense with equations and concepts that should have been beyond him. But they weren't. He understood the fundamentals, could follow the logic, felt his brain expanding just holding the knowledge in his hands. "That's university-level material," a voice said behind him. Parker turned to find a girl about his age, maybe 12, with dark hair in braids and intelligent eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore the Westbrook uniform and carried a stack of books that seemed impossibly heavy. "I know," Parker said, "but it's interesting. You're him, aren't you? The kid from the video." Parker's defenses went up immediately. "Yeah, that was incredible." Her enthusiasm was genuine, not mocking. "I've been doing puzzles since I was 6, and I don't think I could have solved that safe. The way you recognize those layered sequences, pure brilliance." "You really think so?" "I know so. I'm Maya, by the way. Maya Patel. I'm in the advanced mathematics track here." She adjusted her book stack. "If you come to Westbrook, we could study together. I've been looking for someone who actually gets excited about prime number theory." For the first time since the video went viral, Parker felt something loosen in his chest. Someone his own age who didn't see him as a spectacle or a charity case. Just another kid who loved learning. "I'd like that," he said quietly. "Maya," a teacher called from the librarian's desk. "Are you monopolizing our visitor?" "Just making friends, Mrs. Rodriguez." Maya grinned at Parker. "See you around, hopefully." She disappeared into the stacks, leaving Parker with a fragile seed of hope. Maybe he could belong here after all. Carol led them to her office, a warm space filled with plants, student artwork, and photos spanning decades of Westbrook history. She gestured for them to sit, then folded her hands on her desk. "Let me be direct with you," she said. "Parker is exceptionally gifted, the kind of student we design our entire advanced program around. But more than his intelligence, I'm impressed by his character." Rebecca blinked back sudden tears. "His character?" The video that went viral showed more than problem-solving skills. It showed a boy standing up for his mother despite being terrified. A boy facing public humiliation with dignity. A boy who, when given the opportunity to gloat over someone who'd been cruel to him, instead showed compassion. Carol looked at Parker directly. Those qualities, integrity, empathy, courage, matter more than any test score. "So you'd really accept him?" Thomas asked, his voice rough with emotion. "Accept him? Mr. Mitchell, we'd be honored to have him. Parker represents everything Westbrook stands for. Excellence without arrogance, intelligence paired with kindness, potential combined with work ethic." She pulled out a folder. "Here's what I'm proposing. Full scholarship covering tuition, books, and supplies. We have a bus route that passes within 2 blocks of your current address, or wherever you relocate. Lunch program included. Access to all extracurriculars without additional fees." Rebecca's hand shook as she took the folder. "This is too generous." "It's exactly generous enough," Carol corrected. "And there's more. We have a counseling program to help students adjust to academic challenges and life transitions. Parker has been through significant trauma and change in a very short time. We want to support not just his mind, but his whole well-being." "When could he start?" Parker asked, unable to contain his eagerness. Carol smiled. "How about next week? That gives us time to assess his academic level, place him in appropriate classes, and get his uniform ordered." "Uniform?" Parker's face fell slightly. "Don't worry. It's included in the scholarship. And trust me, after a few weeks, you'll appreciate not having to decide what to wear every morning." They talked for another hour about schedules, curriculum, expectations. Carol answered every question with patience and genuine care. By the time they left her office, Rebecca was crying openly. But these were tears of joy so overwhelming they couldn't be contained. "My baby's going to Westbrook Academy," she whispered to Thomas as they walked back to the car. "My brilliant, brave baby is going to get the education he deserves." Thomas wrapped his arm around his wife, his own eyes wet. He's going to thrive there. I can feel it. Parker walked slightly ahead, his mind already racing with possibilities. Advanced mathematics, science labs, a library full of books. New friends like Maya who understood what it meant to love learning. But underneath the excitement, anxiety gnawed at him. What if he couldn't keep up? What if the other students were all smarter? What if he failed and proved Preston Montgomery right about poor kids knowing their limitations? Hey, Thomas's hand on his shoulder pulled him back to the present. I can see you spiraling. What's going on in that brilliant head of yours? What if I'm not good enough? The words tumbled out. What if I embarrass everyone? What if... Stop. Thomas knelt despite his bad leg, looking Parker in the eyes. You opened an impossible safe. You stood up to a billionaire. You've handled media attention and pressure that would break most adults. You are absolutely good enough. But what if the test was just luck? What if I can't do it again? Rebecca joined them, her hand cupping Parker's cheek. Baby, you've been solving puzzles your whole life. Figuring out how to make $3 stretch for dinner. Calculating bus schedules to maximize mom's work efficiency. Teaching yourself mathematics from library books. You didn't get lucky. You've been training for this your entire life without even knowing it. Parker wanted to believe them. Needed to believe them. And if you struggle, Thomas continued, if you find things hard or confusing or overwhelming, that's called learning, son. That's called growth. The smartest people aren't the ones who never struggle. They're the ones who struggle and keep going anyway. The drive home took them past Montgomery Enterprises. Parker couldn't help staring at the building where everything had started. The lobby where Preston had humiliated him. The conference room where he'd opened the safe. The place that had changed his entire life in the span of a week. Do you ever think about him? Parker asked quietly. Mr. Montgomery? Rebecca and Thomas exchanged glances. Sometimes, Rebecca admitted. I wonder if he's learned anything. If he regrets how he treated people. If losing everything made him understand what really matters. He hasn't lost everything though, has he? Parker said. He's still rich. Still has his company. For now, Thomas said. But I heard from Walter that the board is considering removing him as CEO. Too much negative publicity. Too many clients leaving. His empire is crumbling from the inside. Parker felt that complicated twist in his chest again. Satisfaction mixed with sorrow. Justice mixed with compassion. Is it wrong that I don't hate him anymore? No, baby, Rebecca said softly. It means you have a bigger heart than he probably deserves. But that's who you are. That's who we raised you to be. They drove in silence for a moment, each lost in their own thoughts. You know what I realized? Parker said suddenly. Mr. Montgomery thought money made him better than us. But money didn't make him cruel. It just revealed what was already there. And not having money didn't make us less worthy. It just made our worth harder for people to see. Thomas pulled the car over, overwhelmed. Say that again. Money doesn't create character. It just reveals it. Rebecca turned in her seat, looking at her son with wonder. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise, Parker protested. I've had a lot of time to think lately. Well, keep thinking, Thomas said, pulling back into traffic. Because insights like that are rarer than any amount of money. That evening, Daniel called with news. The media attention is starting to fade, he reported. That's good for you. Means you can return to some semblance of normal life. But there's something you should know. What? Rebecca asked, putting him on speakerphone so the family could hear. Preston Montgomery gave an interview this afternoon. It's already making waves online. Parker's stomach dropped. What did he say? I'll send you the link. But Parker, whatever you see, remember, his words say more about him than they do about you. After Daniel hung up, they huddled around Thomas's phone, pulling up the interview. Preston sat in his office, the same office where the safe had been, looking haggard, dark circles under his eyes, rumpled shirt, hair less perfectly styled than usual. The interviewer asked, Mr. Montgomery, the video of you with Parker Mitchell has been viewed over 50 million times. Do you have any regrets about how you handled that situation? Preston was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was hoarse. I have many regrets. He looked directly at the camera. I was raised poor. My mother cleaned houses to put me through school. I built my fortune from nothing, and somewhere along the way, I forgot where I came from. I started treating people the way I'd been treated when I was poor, with contempt, with dismissal, as if their economic status defined their worth. He paused, swallowing hard. When I saw Parker in my lobby that morning, I didn't see a brilliant child. I saw a reminder of everything I'd tried to escape. Poverty, powerlessness, invisibility. And I took out decades of unresolved pain on a boy who didn't deserve it. Tears were forming in Preston's eyes, real tears, not media-coached displays. I made that bet thinking it was impossible to lose, thinking I'd teach this kid a lesson about knowing his place. Instead, Parker taught me a lesson I desperately needed. That intelligence, courage, and character have nothing to do with bank accounts or social status. The interviewer leaned forward. Are you saying Parker deserved to win? I'm saying Parker earned what he won. Through brilliance and bravery I couldn't begin to match. And Preston's voice cracked. I'm sorry to Parker. I'm sorry to Rebecca, his mother, who works harder than I ever have. I'm sorry to everyone I've treated poorly over the years because I confused wealth with worth. Is this apology motivated by your company's financial troubles? Preston's laugh was bitter. My company is bleeding money. The board wants me out. I'm facing the very real possibility of losing everything I built. But this apology? He looked at the camera again. This has nothing to do with business. This is about acknowledging that I was wrong. Deeply, fundamentally wrong. And hoping that maybe, just maybe, some good can come from my mistakes. The interview ended. The Mitchell family sat in stunned silence. He actually apologized, Rebecca whispered. I never thought. Do you think he means it? Thomas asked. Or is this damage control? Parker replayed the interview in his mind, studying Preston's face, his body language, the raw pain in his eyes. I think he means it. I think he's been sitting in that office facing everything he's lost, and finally understanding why. Does that change anything? Rebecca asked gently. How you feel about him? Parker thought carefully. It doesn't erase what he did. Doesn't make the humiliation hurt less. But he struggled to find words for complicated emotions. It makes me hope he can be better, that people can change if they're willing to face hard truths about themselves. That's very mature of you, son, Thomas said. I don't feel mature. I feel confused and tired and like everything's happening too fast. Rebecca pulled him close. Then we slowed down. We take things one day at a time. School starts next week. That's enough to focus on for now. The rest, Preston's journey, the media attention, all of it, we'll handle as it comes. Together, Thomas added. We handle it together. Parker nodded against his mother's shoulder, letting her warmth and his father's steady presence anchor him. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Next week would bring Westbrook and all its possibilities and pressures. But tonight, he was just a boy, loved, protected, and finally, able to believe that maybe things really would be okay. Across the city, Preston Montgomery sat alone in his dark office, watching the interview reactions pour in online. Some people believed his apology, others called it calculated manipulation. Most remained skeptical, waiting to see if actions would back up words. He deserved their skepticism. Decades of cruelty couldn't be erased by one interview. But for the first time in years, Preston Montgomery felt something other than pride or ambition or the hollow satisfaction of wealth. He felt shame. Real, deep, transformative shame. And beneath that shame, something even more uncomfortable, the desire to be better. Not for his company, not for his reputation, but because an 11-year-old boy had shown him what real strength looked like, and he'd spent his entire life pursuing a cheap imitation. Whether Preston could change, whether he would change, remained to be seen. But the seed had been planted. And sometimes, that's all transformation needs. A single moment of genuine recognition that the person you've become isn't the person you want to be. Outside, the city glittered with possibility. In a small apartment, a family held each other close. And somewhere between those 2 points, the future waited. Uncertain, hopeful, and full of chances for redemption on both sides of a story that had captivated millions. The journey was just beginning. Parker's first day at Westbrook Academy arrived with autumn rain tapping against windows. He stood in front of the mirror wearing his new uniform, navy blazer with the school crest, crisp white shirt, khaki pants that actually fit. Rebecca adjusted his collar for the third time, her hands trembling. You look so grown up, she whispered. Mom, you're going to make me cry before I even get there. Good, means you have a heart. She kissed his forehead. Remember, you belong there because of who you are. The bus ride felt surreal. Maya saved him a seat in advanced mathematics. Dr. Warren welcomed him without fanfare, treating him like any other student. Today we're exploring prime numbers and cryptographic systems, she announced. Parker's hand shot up. Is that similar to layered sequences creating security puzzles? Dr. Warren smiled. Exactly. Come show everyone what you mean. For 20 minutes, Parker explained concepts he'd taught himself, drawing diagrams, his nervousness dissolving into pure joy. When he finished, the class erupted in applause. Maya whispered, You're going to fit in just fine here. Lunchtime brought unexpected visitors. Daniel appeared in the cafeteria with someone Parker never expected, Preston Montgomery. The cafeteria went silent. Phones emerged. Whispers spread. Preston looked different, thinner, older, the arrogance replaced by uncertainty. Carol Henderson intercepted them. Mr. Montgomery, this is highly irregular. I need 5 minutes, Preston said quietly. Please. They found a quiet corner. Preston sat across from Parker, hands clasped. I've been in therapy 3 times a week. His voice cracked. Trying to understand why I became who I became. My therapist said I needed to make amends. Not for me, for you. Parker listened silently. I'm so sorry, Parker. My mother cleaned houses, just like yours. I spent my childhood ashamed of her, desperate to escape. When I made money, I erased that part of myself. When I saw you, a brilliant kid whose mother cleaned my building, I saw everything I'd tried to forget. You didn't deserve my cruelty. Preston pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside was a check to Westbrook's scholarship fund. $5 million. For other kids like you, Preston said. Kids whose brilliance is hidden by circumstances. Kids who deserve opportunities, he stood. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know your courage changed me. He turned to leave. Mr. Montgomery, Parker called. Preston turned. I forgive you. Preston's face crumpled. You shouldn't, but I'm choosing to anyway, because holding anger would make me like you used to be. Parker's voice was steady. People can change if they face hard truths. You're trying. That counts. Preston nodded, unable to speak, and left quickly. Daniel squeezed Parker's shoulder. That was incredibly brave. It was just the right thing to do, Parker said simply. That evening, the Mitchell family gathered in their new home, a modest house with 3 bedrooms and a backyard. Thomas had framed Parker's first report card, straight A's, with comments praising his insight and kindness. It hung beside photos of their old apartment, a reminder of how far they'd come. Look at this, Parker said, showing them the newspaper. Montgomery donates $5 to Westbrook Scholarship Fund. The article quoted Carol. This donation will help dozens of brilliant students. Parker Mitchell inspired this through his extraordinary courage. Rebecca read it 3 times, crying. Look what you started, baby. We started it, Parker corrected. Together. You taught me hard work has dignity. Dad taught me kindness matters more than money. We showed people that worth isn't measured in bank accounts. Thomas raised his glass. To family, to second chances, to remembering that true wealth is who we become, not what we have. And they clinked plastic cups from their old apartment. Rebecca had insisted on keeping them, and everything crystallized into perfect clarity. Parker had opened more than a safe that day. He'd opened eyes to injustice, hearts to compassion, minds to the reality that brilliance appears everywhere, in boardrooms and back alleys, in mansions and tiny apartments. Preston learned redemption begins with accountability. Olivia discovered integrity matters more than security. Walter remembered kindness costs nothing but means everything. And a family who'd once had nothing but each other learned that sometimes that's everything you need. Parker closed his mathematics textbook that night, looking at the equation he'd been solving. Complex, challenging, beautiful. Just like life, he thought. Full of problems that seemed impossible until you found the right approach. He'd solved the safes puzzle with his mind, but he'd solved life's bigger puzzle with his heart, and that was worth everything.